Hallo Klickenabendler, wir sind auf der Spiel Essen 2024 bei Spielworxx und jetzt wird hier Molly-Haus vorgestellt von Werle und der Call erklärt das jetzt ganz in Englisch. Hier spielen 5 Leute quasi eine Demopartie und wir werden jetzt mit der Kamera draufschwenken und ihr könnt euch berieseln lassen, wie als wärt ihr in Essen live dabei gewesen mit derselben Geräuschkulisse, wie das Spiel funktioniert. So, now it's your turn.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm going to be teaching Molly-Haus. This is our game that comes out next year. It will be fulfilling the backers sometime in the spring, depending on when the boat comes. But it's in production right now. Molly-Haus is a game about, and I'm going to address y'all, so I'm not going to. All right, so Molly-Haus is a game about 1720s London and the people who gathered in these houses called Molly-Houses where they were allowed to do more or less whatever they'd like. It was hard to get entry, but once you had entry, you were in a protected community. So a safe place. Safe, that is, from other people in the community. While you were there, people would eventually tell stories, and you might find yourself in trouble and being hunted by an organization called the Society for the Reformation of Maners. So your objective in this game is to get as much joy as you can at these parties without getting caught by the cops. All right, now your hand is filled with these vice cards. You're welcome to look at them. Vice cards are your desires. They're your hopes, they're relationships. They're also your knowledge of threats. Let's look at a couple. There are 4 suits. If it has a number, it's a desire. You'll see that it has the suit indicated and its value, and the number of stars is the amount of joy that you can get. Every vice card includes a scene depicted from the historical record. You can see a quote. The quote in the banner is from a primary document. The citation is on the left. Okay, this is a face card. This is a Molly. This is the Queen of Fans, Princess Seraphina. She has a special joy value that's a little different and also a special power. So there are a few things about her that matter, that work a little bit differently. We'll talk about that later. There are jacks and queens. Those are both the Mollys. Here's a jack. And then lastly, there are threat cards, and here's a threat. Threats have a black box in the top left. These are agents of the Society for the Reformation of Manners. So when threats show up at parties, you generally want to deal with them. Okay, let's talk about how the game works. The flow of the game is pretty simple. On your turn, you're going to roll these dice. You're going to choose to resolve one die or both dice. Okay? So you could choose to not move. This has 0 boots on it. Or you could move 2 spaces. You're moving around the board. After you move, you take an action. Make sense? All the actions are listed on your board right here. They're pretty simple. Generally, you're going to be moving around the board and you're going to be getting cards. And then you can take when you take an action, what the action is depends on where you're standing. So the corners of the board are the Molly-Houses. There are 4 Molly-Houses. Note that they are associated with different suits. Next to the Molly-Houses are cruising grounds. This is where you trade your desires for more vice cards. It's how you build up your hand. Your hand size is 6 cards. If you ever have more than 6 cards, it's okay. At the end of your turn, you're going to discard the excess. If you end up in a shop, as your action, you can take an item. It goes in one of your 2 item slots. If you already have 2 items, that's fine. You can just throw it away. All right, let's talk about cruising. The cruise action is very simple. If you have a desire, that's a numbered card, you can play it in your player area, and then you're going to draw cards from the deck. The number of cards you draw is equal to your reputation in that suit. So this cruising action is associated with hearts. You'll see how that color carries through. So if I played a heart card here, I would get to draw 1 card because my reputation in hearts is 1. Now let's say I had played my second heart card at the London Bridge. I now am drawing 2 cards from the deck. But I now have a reputation in hearts that is higher. Various times in the game, when you get caught with cards, you have to discard these cards and you might gain cubes that match the color. If I were to later cruise with this, my reputation is 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? Your cards, you'll gain, you'll lose. The cubes you will have forever. Okay. Now, if something horrible happens at Suki Bevel's, the player with the most reputation is going to get caught, and they're going to have a major indictment. At the end of the game, they'll have to commit a trial, be in a trial, and we'll see if you could lose the game because you were found guilty, or you could lose points, okay? So just know that if you have a high heart reputation, you want to keep Suki Bevels open. All right. Let's clear a little bit of space here for the market. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all of the actions, and then I'm going to end that by talking about how we actually score points. So if you're listening to me and you're wondering, how do I get points? Do not worry, we will talk about it. All right, so start of your turn, you're going to roll the dice. You can use one die or both dice. So this means I can move my pawn 2, or I can move my pawn 4 spaces. Does that make sense? You have to move. If you roll this is a non-move. So if I rolled this, I could choose to not move or move 2. This symbol is the market discard. The market is going to be populated by a number of cards, like this. When you roll a market discard, the rightmost card, the one in the farthest spot, is going to get discarded. When you discard a card, most of the time they go to the safe pile. Some cards will get discarded to this pile. This is called gossip. It's bad. You don't want cards to go here, okay? So that's how the dice rolling works. Make sense? Easy. All right, cruising grounds. When you go to a cruising ground, as your action, so actions fall into 2 categories. Basic actions you always have access to. Site actions you only have access to at that place. Let's actually go through the basic ones first. Indulge says anywhere in the red neighborhood you can draw a red card from the market. So as my action, I could go to Old Round Court and I could take this desire card into my hand. Make sense? That's the indulge action. The lie low action you can take from anywhere. You just take the top card of the deck. Okay. The accuse action we will talk about later. Okay, that's an advanced action. We're not worrying about it. All right, there are 3 site actions. Now, if you look at the board, you'll see that every corner is a Molly-Haus. Every spot in between the neighborhoods is a shop. And every other spot is a cruising ground. So the shops are very easy. If you go to the shop, you can take the item, and then when taken, you resolve a market discard. So that's going to throw that away. So that's all there is to shop. The cruise action, if you have a card, let's say I have this in my hand, remember, I can play it to my reputation. I will then draw cards equal to my reputation of that suit. Note that the suit in question, it depends on the neighborhood. Make sense? Okay. Now, when you take the cruise action, you can only play desires. Desires are cards with numbers. Hopefully you can see the technique of this teach is basically to repeat every rule twice, because Molly-Haus does not have very many rules, but every rule is so important. Okay, the final action is the most complicated action in the game, and that is the festivity. The festivity can only be thrown at one of the 4 Molly-Houses on the board. Now, when a festivity is thrown, whoever threw it takes the candelabra to mark that they're going to start. Festivities work like this. We're going to play essentially a mini game. We're going to use cards in our hand, and starting with the person who threw the festivity, we're going to go around the table twice, and you are going to play cards to the center table. Now the festivity runner first is going to play a card from the house, and this just plays from here. This is the stranger who walked in. And then we're going to go around the table, and you're going to play it on this center board kind of in your area. So you'll play cards here, you'll play cards here. They can get messy, it's okay. What we're going to be doing though is we're going to gradually be playing a lot of cards out here to this table. If you want to pass, you're welcome to pass, but you can't re-enter. Okay? So when it's your turn at a festivity, you can play or pass. Now if it gets around, the community is going to play another card, and then it would come back to you, and you would play a card, and maybe everybody wants to pass. Once the festivity is over, so after we've done 2 rounds, we are going to select the best 4 cards. And if one of your cards was selected, it scores points. That's good. And if one of your cards wasn't selected, it goes to gossip, and you get a free redraw. Because you made a friend, you just didn't make the right friend. Okay? All right, so any card that you scored, let's say both of these score, they're going to go in your reputations. And you're going to score joy equal to the stars in the card. The higher the number, the more stars. Now, Mollies are kind of special. This joy value they have, players never score. Instead, if you have a relationship with Miss Kitten here, every time you score a card of that suit, you're going to get 2 points. Also, it's whenever this card enters your reputation. So let's say you had a relationship with Miss Kitten, and then later you're walking around the board and you go cruising. You would have to do it over here. And you add this card to your reputation. Well, Miss Kitten's very happy about that. You'll score 2 joy. Make sense? Okay. All right. Now, I said that the best set is selected. What did I mean? Well, this follows a little card game that we built that you'll see here. The best party is the surprise ball, which is 4 desires, so numbered cards only, of the same suit in a sequence. All right, so a 4-card run. You can't beat that. It's the best thing on the table. The second best thing is a christening, which is a queen and 3 of a kind. All right? The third best thing is a dance, which is a jack and a small run. So in this instance, for this party, a jack, the 1, the 2, and the 3 would score. So you would gain these cards, you'd score the joy indicated, you would just score this. Anything that didn't score is going to gossip, and players are going to get new cards from the deck. Make sense? Now this card here, this stranger, this is a community card. If it scores, we advance the community joy. What's going to happen is we're going to run through this whole deck of cards, and then we're going to check for the end of the game. The game is going to end if the community joy has gotten to 20. I will mention, for the sake of posterity, that in this pre-production copy, all of these numbers are 5 too low. The last adjustment we made was to increase the threshold. But for the sake of a demo, it's perfect for that. Yeah. Okay, so if joy is here and we're out of cards in that deck, the game is over and the player with the highest joy wins. Make sense? Great. Okay, does that make sense for the party? Now let's say that someone had played, let's say there were 2 2s on the table. Well, the player who's the runner chooses which of those 2 2s to score. Let's say if someone played a 4, it's always going to build the highest numbered set it can. So now the set is going to be 2, 3, 4, and this poor lady is cut out of the deal. So even if you see, so dances are very unstable. People will build a low dance, and then other players will start ratcheting it up. But be careful because the unpicked cards are going into gossip. Does that make sense? Okay, there are just a couple other rules I need to explain, and then I'm ready to turn you loose. Okay, let's talk about the threats. Oh my gosh, you all have the threats in your hand. Okay, so there are 2 threats. So I've talked about how all the cards work and all the numbers and everything. There are 2 cards I haven't talked about, the rogues and the constables. Each suit has a rogue and a constable. When a rogue is played by the community, it turns into a random number. It's a 2. If you play a rogue, you can set its value. It's not a wild, you have to set the value the moment you play it, but it will have that value. You could even set its value to 0, which is not a value of any card. The constables are not numbers. However, if no party can be built, the 4 lowest cards will score. So you might see these fools trying to build a dance, but they can't do it. So you could just start tossing out low values and know that that's going to score instead. If a quiet gathering happens, the constables will always take a slot. So they always act like the lowest number. Now, when you do a quiet gathering, it's constables and desires. Rogues can never score, even if they're set at 0 in a quiet gathering. All right? They always want a party. Okay. Now, these cards have a secondary effect that's very important. When you score, let's say you play this constable and it's scoring. Scoring a constable means outfoxing a threat. It's called foiling a threat. When that happens, all of your matching cards go to the safe pile. So this is how you clear your reputation. Now if you want, you can boast, and instead of just clearing this, you can take a matching cube. So you're like preserving your reputation, but you're also keeping things safe. That's up to you though, you don't have to do it. Does that make sense? Now let's say the community threw out this rogue. and it was a 5 of pentacles. Community threats are felt by everybody. So if this pentacle rogue is scored, all players can clear their pentacle reputations. However, if you play a threat and it does not score, they hit you. You get exposed. And when you get exposed, all of your red cards turn into cubes, and then these cards do not become safe, they go to gossip. So, to review, threats you can foil by scoring at parties, or if you do not score them at a party, they will expose you. If you played the threat, you can foil or expose it. If the community played the threat, it could foil or expose everybody. So if this came out here in the middle and no one scored it, then everybody who has hearts is getting hit and they're all going to gossip. Does that make sense? Okay. There are like 2 little rules and then we're just going to start playing, okay? All right, let's talk about the little rules. So little rule 1 is that at the end of the week, we're going to go through a series of phases which are going to determine how the game's going to end. So all these cards are going to be in gossip. Sure. And we're going to shuffle the gossip pile. We're going to remove a third of it, and then we're going to reveal what remains. So this is, the society's going through our trash, okay? And every threat card will generate evidence against the community equal to the number of matching cards. So this constable, Mr. Sellers, snooped around and he found 2 pieces of evidence. And this evidence goes on the house. If a house gets 7, it's going to close. If it gets 7, it's going to close. At that point, the person with the highest number of cubes is going to get indicted. Second highest will get a minor indictment. If a house with 7, if a house has been closed, gets 7 more cubes, you've lost the game. Or if all 4 houses happen, you've lost the game. Now there is a way to still win, but we'll talk about that later. Basically, when you get an indictment, you have an encounter with the cops and you can choose to become an informer or not. If you become an informer, now you're kind of playing Battlestar Galactica. And again, we'll talk about that later. Probably not on camera. So, does that make sense? Great. Okay, there are a few other things that people need to be aware of. So, exposure at parties is just one way to be exposed. You'll note here in the bottom right, let's say this card was in the market. If this card gets discarded from the market, you're going to expose the most infamous player. So if this card falls off the market, it goes to gossip, and the player who has the highest value of hearts cards gets hit. And then all those cards go here and they take cubes. Okay, so that's bad. Also, at the end of the week, if you have any threat cards in your hand, they're going to hit you.
What is a week?
At the end of the deck.
Okay.
So after we've gone through the whole deck, if you were holding onto a bunch of threat cards, they hit you. So if you have threats in your hand, the only way you can get them out of your hand is by playing them at parties. Or if you are over your hand size at the end of your turn, you can discard. But you will always discard to gossip. Make sense? Okay, those are all the rules. To start the game, select 1 card in your hand and play it just into your reputation. If it is a Molly card, you will start with that scoring bonus. If it's a desire, you'll start with that joy. And if it's a threat card, it'll just become safe. So this is also a good way to get rid of it. But and that also is going to determine where you start on the board. So just pick something that you like. Pick a card you like. All right, and that's the full teach of the game. I'm happy to have, you can stay around as long as you like. There we go.
Yeah, it's like...
So we'll reveal these. And so your pawn is starting here. Your pawn is starting up here. Heart, yeah, very good. Very good. All right, we're going to start with you. Throw those dice. All right, so you can move 1 or 2 spaces.
Right.
And you have to choose one or the other.
So why don't I move 1 space?
Sure.
1 reputation.
Yeah, do you have another heart card in your hand?
I do not.
Okay, so you go ahead and take this from the market. That's the indulge action. Right?
Yep.
And that's your full turn. And then now it's your turn. And then fill them up. So throw those dice.
Okay.
All right, so you can move 1 or 2. And your pawn's up there. Nope. Yep. Yep, you can take that. Go shop, take the dress. And then this is going to get discarded to the safe pile. Yep, always the farthest one. The items explain how they're used on the card. If you have questions, let me know.
Not replenished.
Not until the end of the week.
Also discarded, right? Yes.
So 2 or 4.
Everybody's grabbing a dress.
Grab the items. That discards this card. Be careful, you are accelerating the game. Like a lot of games I've worked on, it's very easy to drive the car into a wall. Okay, look at these items. All right, and here I'm at Essen with all the Euro players. Okay.
Since everybody's doing it,
Okay. So now you have an interesting move. You could go 1-2, and then that heart card you could play.
okay. So I come here.
Yep. Play the heart card. All right, and then you'll draw 2 cards from the deck. And then because you played a heart card, you're going to score 3 joy.
All right.
There you go. Oh, and actually, you started with 3 joy. You start with 4.
Oh, the starting point is your joy. Okay.
And then
Okay. Yeah. So we forgot about that.
just a little.
Das Spiel soll nächstes Jahr bei Spielworxx erscheinen, heißt Molly-Haus, und was ihr hier seht, ist, glaube ich, einmal die Deluxe-Komponenten und einmal die normalen Komponenten, weil das, was die Kamera gerade einschwenkt, sind so Figuren, die fühlen sich ein bisschen an wie Metall, ist aber nicht super schwer, also weiß nicht genau aus welchem Metall, und weiter hinten sieht man andere Figuren, ich schätze mal, das sind die, die in normalen Versionen drin sind, aber wahrscheinlich wird wie bei allen Leder-Games-Spielen der Neoprenplan in der Mitte auf jeden Fall drin sein, der war bei den anderen ja auch drin, das heißt, der Hauptunterschied wird wahrscheinlich die Figuren sein, die hier als Deluxe oder normal in der Edition drin sind. Das Spiel erscheint dann nächstes Jahr 2025 und kann man dann sicherlich auf der Spielworxx-Seite vorbestellen.